Welcome. My name is Kate Harmon, and I'm the Director of Cross-Campus Engagement for the Lundquist Center for Entrepreneurship. And today on our Getting Ahead series, I'm really excited to be featuring Jill Nelson. Jill is a general partner at Elevate Capital Fund and the founder and former CEO of Ruby Receptionists. So welcome, Jill.
Well, thank you for having me, Kate.
Thank you. I really enjoyed our pre-conversation because I try to focus these conversations around a particular theme. And I loved how you suggested you don't have to have it all figured out early in your career. So with that as the sort of theme, I think, of this, I would love if you would just give us a little bit of background from your college days at UO and kind of what your early career looked like up before you actually founded Ruby Receptionists.
Well, I'd be happy to. I have very fond memories of those days. I am a 1988 graduate of the University of Oregon School of Business. My degree is in accounting, but I learned pretty early on in my major that the classic discipline of accounting, and specifically public accounting, was not going to be my thing. And it took me a really, really long time to figure out what was my thing. So post-college, I had no outlook whatsoever, and I went to the campus career center and took the one job where I actually got an offer, and it was for selling computers to a company called Businessland. That is not a made-up company. It's a real thing. And this was back in the day when even when you were purchasing a personal computer, you would want assistance and expertise. And I went through an awesome training program to be able to sell to businesses. But did that for about a year and a half, and then decided didn't like being a salesperson either. And ended up, I had gotten married and gotten pregnant and decided to stay home for a bit. Had my sons, took a job as an apartment manager so that I could pay the bills while still being at home. It was a live in the apartment complex kind of deal. And then decided I wanted to get back out in the world, took a job door to door selling digital music subscription to Comcast subscribers back in the day when you needed a little box. And that had its run, but it was a little bit scary. You were going out in the evening to neighborhoods and into people's homes that you didn't know. And as a 20-something young person, at some point, I'm like, I don't think this is for me either. So then I was back at home, and my neighbor said, hey, a friend of mine is going on leave. She's pregnant and needs someone to fill in her job as a receptionist. And I said, well, I have a degree in accounting. I am not a receptionist. And I'm really looking for something more professional. And she kind of pushed me to like, well, just talk to the person. It's for a business brokerage firm. And I was like, what's a business brokerage firm? And, you know, as much as I didn't care for auditing, I did, you know, I've always been fascinated with business and what works and, you know, in small businesses in general. And that actually caught my attention. The long story short, I ended up taking the job, and she ended up not coming back from maternity leave. And I ended up staying on as a office manager / receptionist for this small business brokerage firm. And during that time, it was like a curation of small businesses and what works and what doesn't. And I got to see hundreds and hundreds of tax returns for small businesses coming in the door, people ready for retirement, the sad instances where people had poured their life savings into a business and it wasn't working, and they were coming to us to see if somebody else could take the reins and do something with the business. And, you know, and other huge success stories where a lifetime of work afforded people a wonderful retirement through the sale of their business. So that actually ended up being both, I mean, it was everything. I got to curate what worked in business, and I actually also really, really got to understand the importance of office experience, the importance of the receptionist, and how making a great impression really could help a firm, win business. And so that was essentially the breeding ground for Ruby Receptionists, which is now ruby.com, which I can tell that story as well.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk a little bit about it, because how you came up with this and with the idea for Ruby, and what you ended up having to do in preparations before leaving the stability of your job is really interesting. So share with us, you brought us up to this point, you're in this business broker, learning the ropes and stuff. What made you think of the idea for Ruby Receptionists?
Yeah, so back to the day at the business broker in my receptionist desk, ended up getting my license and becoming a small-time business broker for, it was like the late 90s. And I decided, and this is really dating me, but this is back in the era of dial-up internet. And if you've ever heard those modem noises, that's what was going on. At the time, there's all these local providers, and I decided that I would help these local providers during this era of roll-up sell to the larger companies. And that was a very quick consolidation. And then 2000 hit, and literally overnight, money just completely dried up, probably not dissimilar to what we're about to see here. And just literally overnight, my career was over. So during this time of selling businesses, and this is back in the day when manufacturing firms were like, that was the star of the business brokerage world. And I was growing, these subscription businesses, any business where you're getting the same revenue over and over again, that really makes a lot of sense. And if I ever have a business, I'm going to start a subscription business. And at the time, that was just not the sentiment. It was, well, if you're a service, your talent walks out the door every day, you really don't have value. And I just was like, yes, but I've already proved selling. So if I could start a business where I could keep people happy and they would not leave me and they would tell other people, then that would work. So that was kind of my theory. And so without a job and $17,000 in my bank account or actually in an IRA that I had gotten from my receptionist job, I really got stuck on this idea of an executive suite. And it's the old-fashioned WeWork. At the time, these were the Regis HQ, where you would lease out Class A office space and provide small offices, and then the shared secretarial and receptionist and conference room and copy services. Those were all the things that I actually really understood the value that they provided, and I understood how small businesses on limited budget didn't have necessarily the resources to hire full-time people. So I just thought it was just a brilliant idea. So that was it. I was going to start a executive suites business in the Pearl District that at the time, again, this was 2002, 2003, the Pearl was just kind of still young, but up and coming. And I just thought it was a great place, but two issues. Again, I had no money and other than the $17,000 and no business experience. So was not successful finding a landlord that was willing to build out an entire floor of Class A office space at their expense for me. And so really had this sort of door shut in my face before even launching. But it turned out to be the best thing ever, because it forced me to think, okay, well, what can I do with the resources I had? And just started thinking about that same idea, but without the real estate. And I started thinking, well, if I could help small businesses that weren't sitting right next to me with the same services, what would that look like? And I ended up, just searching the internet for software that might help me be able to take a phone call and actually get it to the small business wherever they were and be able to provide remote services. And this was for Dropbox, for all kinds of wonderful tools that we have today to work remotely. And so wrote this business plan to run. It was essentially everything minus the office, but the receptionist piece was what I got really excited about. And I went to the local phone company it was Integra Telecom at the time, and they actually brought in their VP of engineering and a couple other technical people and really helped me. Like, they were super excited about the business idea, and they totally helped me figure out how I would be able to get the right technology to provide this business. And so that was 2003. So that was from the time of 1988 graduation to the launch of Ruby. I was 37 years old at the launch of Ruby. So a long time passed before I really figured out what it was. And for those of you that don't know Ruby, today we are a platform for small business that provides telephony, live receptionist, live customer experience, a chat platform, and the ability for us to actually perform your live chat for you or use our AI bots. But we grew to over 600 employees and $60 million of ARR before retiring last year, and to handed over the reins as CEO and sold to private equity, and remain on the board. So it's really, you know, one of those wandering stories of success. And had I, you know, at my graduation in 1988, if I ever would have thought, like, is this what I am going to do? It wouldn't have even entered my mind.
It's a great story. I'm curious if you could think back right in when you started to launch Ruby Receptionists. What kind of things did you have to do to kind of gain early traction? Were you targeting specific industries with your services, or what kind of things really were helpful in helping you build your customer base?
Yeah, so for some reason, and I even found not too long ago a paper that I wrote in writing, I think it was 121, back again, I'm dating myself constantly, about how small businesses should all have a computer to make them more efficient. There's something about, I have always been attracted to small business and how they can be efficient and get a leg up and provide great experience. I think really being tied to that value proposition early on, I was able to say, you know, what is it that we can do for you that I know you need, that I know is a pain point? When I first started, I thought it was all kinds of businesses, and we offered appointment scheduling. So natural thinking went to like massage therapists that were independent and needed, you know, they needed to be available to schedule, but they also needed to perform the massage. And then the other natural industry that came to mind was attorneys, especially those solo and small firm attorneys that just onesie Tuesday. So when I started, I mean, there was so much paper, like literal paper clip and tape things to make everything work. Wore every single solitary hat. But one of the best things that happened, this is before we even went live, was just at home searching, like, how do you market your business, and came across this, you know, Google pay-per-click, and it was brand new, and I just was fiddling around at night, and the bidding for a virtual receptionist, which was a real unknown concept at the time, and some other terms, was like 10 cents a click. And so I just started just reading about SEO and pay-per-click, and just was like, well, I'll just do this in my free time at night. And we actually started getting calls for service before we launched, and they were coming from the East Coast too. And which was another early pivot before launch, because I think I was attached to this idea of the executive suites. In my mind, it was a local service. But people started calling from everywhere because of this SEO internet thing, and the pay-per-click. And then one of the first people I interviewed to hire as a receptionist, she was coming out of stay at home. Her kids were in grade school at the time. She was like, hey, I love getting up early. If by chance you wanted to open for the East Coast, I could work at 5 a.m. and then I could be home for the kids when they get home from school. And it was like, okay. And so it was just one of those opportunistics. We were a national company, provided toll-free numbers for our customers instead of local phone numbers so that they didn't have to incur the long distance. And so that we were, and so that's really what got the traction. And it took forever to get the first 20 customers. And I skipped the part where I wrote a business plan and got a small business loan from a local bank, the Pacific Continental Bank, which is out of Eugene. They were a big small business lender at the time. And I did not have any collateral left on my home, but they actually approved a $75,000 from my business plan and just secured by the assets of the business. So that allowed me to buy the phone system, allowed me to design the whole experience and hire some employees so that we could actually have coverage from morning till night. I actually had 4 employees, a signed lease, a personal guarantee on a phone contract, a phone system, and $75,000 worth of debt before even launching day 1. So it was a huge roll of the dice, you know, put everything on the line to make this happen. I should have known better having been a business broker. I'm like, that's how people get themselves into trouble. And it took forever to get those first 20 customers. And, but kept at it, and they did not quit. And then they started telling other people, and it just was a few more customers every single day. Today, we are Oregon's record holder for consecutive years on the fastest growing companies list that the Portland Business Journal hosts. Sitting at 12, I think we're going to hit 13 consecutive years. But that's the beauty of a subscription business, is if you can do it and you can do it well and you keep those customers happy, it just builds on itself. And I think that's a piece of it. And then really, really understanding your customers and really being there to solve their problems and be there with them and deliver, 10x the value of whatever it is you're charging. It's winning formula.
That's awesome. I'm curious, did you ever have like an aha moment where you finally said like, all right, this is going to be big? Do you have one of those moments?
I had an aha moment where I was like, okay, I think we're going to make payroll. I think it really like, I think maybe there was an aha moment when in 2000, okay, I have so many stories. It's, there's all these different sort of stages of Ruby going from 0 to 600 employees. There was one time, and this was in, let's see, I guess this was 2008. So there was another economic downturn, and we did a lot of cultural work and mission and goal setting then. And it was then that we set out this goal. It was called 10 at 10. At year 10 of business, we would do $10 million in revenue. And at the time, we were a $1 million revenue business. And we did this visioning exercise of, like, okay, well, what would that look like? How many customers would that be? How many employees would that be? How big would our offices need to be? And like really kind of like spelled it all out in both a like creative and inspiring way, but also a tactical way of like, okay, and we did the exercise of what would we need to do to get there. And we kind of worked backwards and said, well, this year we would need to do this. And this year we would need to do that. And we looked at it and we're like, well, that seems doable. Let's go for it. But at that time when we set this goal, we also identified the key big rocks that we had to accomplish in order to hit that goal. And one of the things that was identified, well, we had to move our location to finally a Class A office space. We finally got into that Class A office space. And the other thing was we have to get onto our own technology platform. We had used off the shelf, but kind of tinkered software and phone system to make it work. But we really realized in order to deliver our service the way we were accustomed to at scale, we couldn't rely on our memories. We needed software that did exactly what our customers needed us to do. And I think that's when we were like, okay, we're really a technology company. And that's where we started to launch our platform. And I think 2013 was a year we hit that 10 at 10 goal. We moved into a second location. It was big time. And when we moved into that second office, I think there was like, dang, okay. Along the way, there was in this 2011, when we launched our software, that was also big. And that year we also won the number of Fortune magazine and the Great Place to Work is a Great Place to Work contest, who win, and we won #1 in the country. And that was a real like, whoa, we're on to something here. And then I had a marketing person come to me and basically offered to work for free and said, commission only, because he was like, you have this Ferrari and it's parked in the garage and let me help you get it out. He just was like, this is big. This is something you can't even see it yourself. And so I think maybe that was also a moment where I'm like, oh, okay, but still in a million years would never imagine where Ruby is today.
That's awesome. As a solo founder, I mean, you are wearing multiple hats all the time. I'm curious, at what point did you find out that you felt like you needed to bring on a team to sort of help do a lot of everything that you were doing?
Yeah, the team and multiple hats question, I think, is like, it's such a packed question. And at different stages of the entrepreneurial journey, there's it's just this constant struggle. You're overworked and you want to rely on other people, but it's your baby and you want everything to go your way. And so you become your own bottleneck. And it's just a constant struggle. And the big lesson of my life has had to be around leadership and really going from leading people that I direct, who do exactly what I would like them to do, and in my way, to, as we grow, really having to partner with strategic leaders in their specific domain and aligning around vision, but letting them lead strategy. So there are a few roles where I took that hat off as soon as possible. I am not a glutton for punishment, and if I am enjoying the work, I will work night and day. But if I am not, I will gladly take that hat off. And so, and also just this commitment to service. So some of the earlier, like provisioning customers, selling, actually I sold every one of our customers up until 2009. But certainly there are just roles where it was like, I'm not any better at it than other people. And so one of the first director roles I promoted was into customer experience, which became customer happiness, and now it's customer success. But oh my gosh, they were so good, and they had a higher standard than I did for a level of service. And that was a really great lesson to learn. Like, hey, when you put somebody that's naturally skilled in and they're doing what they love, it's a win-win. And I never had to think about that again. I also had many other challenges where I'd put somebody into a role and probably before they were ready, thinking I was doing a wonderful thing, promoting somebody from being a receptionist, and ultimately wasn't able and didn't provide them the resources and training that they needed to be successful. And those are not fun learning lessons either. I have mentored a number of businesses through the Entrepreneurs Organization. That's EO Network. It's a global nonprofit organization. They have this accelerator program, and you get groups of 3 to 4 businesses. And I would say across the board, at that $250,000 revenue level, that was the idea, that we would take these businesses and get them to the $1 million level. It's a 3-year program, and across the board, that bottleneck, like you become the bottleneck because you either have all the expertise or you have a certain way you want business done, and you don't want to let go. And so everything has to come through you before it gets done. And that's like a pivotal point of figuring out how to partner with a team that you can trust, that has enough expertise, but is really aligned in the vision. But it's essential in order to break through and grow.
That makes sense. In addition to being a solo founder, you're a female founder. So I'm interested to know whether you faced any sort of unique challenges that you might attribute to being a female that maybe males didn't have to face, if you've had any of those challenges.
It's a great, obviously I'm not a male founder, so I don't know exactly what specifically. And I will also say, like, I remember it, not necessarily as an entrepreneur, but in my first job, like at the University of Oregon, you know, in my accounting classes, it was like 50-50, you know, women, men. It never occurred to me. It just did not occur to me that there would be any sort of bias or advantage or disadvantage. And then I got into the working world selling computers, and my eyes were open, and I was the person that was so shocked. I would just march in. I was just an agitator. I'd march into my boss's office and complain about this horrible behavior, these men, and this unfair advantage, and they would be like, "Oh, go sell, Jill." But you know, as an entrepreneur, I think in retrospect, yes, there are always things that perhaps I didn't even recognize as bias or unfair advantage. But I think as an entrepreneur, you always have to go into it going, it's high risk. There's no such thing as fairness. You either succeed or you don't. It kind of has nothing to do with it. So I would say I had things going for me. And then, I mean, there were times, especially early on, when it was always around commercial real estate, when I would try to get these leases or get people to essentially, you know, bet on me, where I would see it. But I would only see it in some places. Like the phone company, like, was so excited to work with me. And this was, you know, and then, you know, other people weren't. And then I couldn't get a lease. And then Al Solheim, who was a big real estate, you know, sort of icon in the Pearl District, he was so excited to, you know, bank on me and provide me, you know, so I don't know. I think I had other advantages, like my degree from the University of Oregon in accounting and a business sense and a really good idea. So I was really lucky in those aspects. And then once the business reached a certain point, but you know, by the time I sold to private equity, I had 10 years of financial statements and massive success and profit and EBITDA. And so at that point, you know, there's just not that much bias with it, you know, show me the money kind of thing.
That makes sense. Let's talk a little bit about culture. You hinted at it earlier. I'm curious, what is your philosophy about workplace culture, and how did you happen to instill culture at Ruby Receptionists?
Yeah, so culture is everything. And in time, especially like times like today, where you're asking employees to do things that, you know, you've never had to ask them to do, working from home and accommodating different schedules. And it is especially in challenging times where the culture is everything, because you treat people as a family and as on a mission doing something together during the times when things are great, and they pay it back in spades during the challenging times. And I, you know, from the get-go, for me, the culture was more of a, well, I am going to spend every waking hour with the people that I work with. So I certainly want to be in an environment where everybody's happy to be, and I don't want people resenting me. And, you know, mainly it was more like, I want to be in a place that I want to come to. But very early on, I realized culture wasn't necessarily about the perks. It was really about tying what it is you're doing and the values of which you deliver what it is you're doing, and surrounding yourself with people who are inspired and motivated by those same ideals. So in 2006, we did our first ever employee survey, and it was encouraged by one of my employees, and we'd never done one. And as a small business owner, it was really scary for me because it was personal. I wanted people to be happy. So I was a little scared of the results, but I did it. And, you know, people generally came back and said, I like my job. I like the people I work with. You know, I feel adequately compensated for the work I'm being asked to do. But there's this theme around like, I don't know that I'm really doing anything important. I'm answering all these different phone calls, 200 different phone calls for different businesses every day. I'm not like doing anything meaningful. And that was a real, like, it was actually a punch to the gut to hear that. I was like, oh my gosh, how could I have created a business on the backs of people who don't feel like they're doing meaningful work? And that lasted just a really, really short moment, because I realized, as much as they may not have realized it, I was hearing every single solitary day from customers that are like, you have no idea how much you've helped my business. You have no idea the peace of mind. I feel like I have someone on the team. And callers would call and say, how nice it is to have someone that actually cares about the business. And so that was really like, I need to do a better job of communicating what it is we're actually doing. And that was the genesis of our mission and core values that actually got created during the 2008-2009 downturn, when I actually thought perhaps the business was done for. And it was one of this sort of like, okay, first it was like, how can we, make sure that we are the last thing that our customers cut? And then it was like so scary that it was like, all right, well, if we're going down swinging. How do we want to be remembered? And it turned out that both of those things were one and the same, which is we were like, we want to be there. We want to be a warm, friendly voice, some calm in the storm when everyone's stressed out and customer service is going out the window. We're just going to be that humanity in this really, really scary time. That became the foundation of our mission, which is to keep alive those real human connections that are increasingly lost in this technology focus and disconnected virtual world, which is as strong today as it ever was. And we created this set of values of how do we want to represent that. And this was all created in the 2008-2009 downturn. Our employees really, really gelled around that. And so, culture is how you show up at work every day. But I contend it's really about being really clear about what it is you're doing and the values of which you want to deliver, and being really vocal about it and from the beginning. And I talk about our culture often as an attract and repel culture, because there are those that work there and thrive there, they love it. Like the idea of being able to talk to 200 people a day, that like gets them so excited. And the idea of like living to make somebody else's day, like, ooh, what can I send them, or how, what can I do to surprise them or just support them? That is some people, that is not everybody. And that is totally okay. But that's what culture is defining who you are, so that if that's not you, that you're somewhere else. And I've seen thriving cultures that are very, very competitive or very serious and disciplined. And there are also really strong, healthy cultures who feel very, the employees there feel very valued for what it is they do. They've really found a home which aligns with their own personal values as well.
As you look back over the 17 years that you were running Ruby, can you explain like what were some of the greatest successes that you felt like you achieved, and on the flip side, what were some of the greatest challenges? You hinted at a few already, thinking about going from 1 million to 10 million,
Mm-hmm.
and the recession in 2008 and how that impacted your business.
Mm-hmm.
But were there any other sort of like milestones, like when you hit them, you're like, wow, that's a huge, record of success that I can be proud of?
Yeah, I mean, being the great place to work, entering it for the first time and coming in at number 1, and then we ended up every year we were in the small business category. We ended up in the top 5. That was just like, that was the highlight, probably the highlight. Just really understanding what it was we're doing. Almost all of the real highlights are intimate people stories, but there is also the launch of our software was a huge gamble, of which foolishly, on retrospect, designed a platform without any help from UX or product, or other than just commanding some developers, like, this is what I want it to do, and not being able to test it at scale. And then, for reasons I won't go into, realizing there was literally no backwards path. The platform we were on had reached its end of life. We had to rip out all the hardware to even replace our technology. So on May 1st, 2011, we launched on our new software, and it was, it was this work of a year and a half of receptionists providing feedback on what they needed. And then it was dozens of our employees working like 12-hour days to ensure that everything got entered in the new system. And it was really one of those, like, well, on Monday morning, May 1st, we will either continue to be in business or we will be out of business. And about a week before we launched, I went from feeling completely panicked to feeling like completely like I couldn't wait, because I was like, you know what? This is the best team that ever, you could ever imagine. And they have thought of everything, and they have worked tirelessly. And of course it's going to work, and it's going to work flawlessly. And sure enough, it did. And so that was a super proud moment to be on our own technology platform, as much as we did not do it well. I mean, like, the planning well, in terms of, like, looking back, like, probably could have de-risked that situation. But really proud moment. There is just endless, and the challenging times, the really, really tough times, they're always human based times. As we grew, like, one of the challenges of being an entrepreneur is you have a very clear idea of how you want things to go. And so my private equity story is, in 2014, I sold the majority. And then I stayed on as CEO, and I stayed on and then exited fully last year. But once we had the resources from private equity, we were able to attract and hire some really wonderful executives. And as much as I thought I was a great leader and just really, like, I was their biggest fans, I learned, and not in a fun way, that was not what they were feeling at all. And had a really, really tough time learning that my team was not thriving under my leadership. I ended up hiring a CEO coach and learning, a lot of self-discovery, and that became, a really wonderful thing too. But the biggest, whether it's that or small instances where, especially, I think the most challenging things have been promoting somebody into a position because I believed in them, and then not supporting them enough to be successful, and then feeling horrible because now, I take responsibility for putting someone to a job that they weren't ready for, and then they end up without a job. And people stuff, it's always challenging.
Well, it is. And I think you hit on something really important that is really not discussed a lot, is, like, when does a founder know when it's, like, the right time to step down? And you highlighted earlier this, Ruby Receptionist was your baby. So, like, how, mentally should a founder sort of prepare themselves to kind of step away? I know you're still on the board of directors of Ruby right now, but can you speak about, what you had to do to sort of prepare yourself, and like, how hard of a decision is that?
Yeah, and I probably was late on that decision. And one of the things my CEO coach helped me understand, we did this Hogan assessment. I don't know if I'm sure you guys do all kinds of assessments. The Hogan one identified my imagination as 99th percentile. And she was like, what are you going to do with your imagination in this role? Because the role of the CEO at 600 people it's just not the same as the role of the CEO at 100 people. And it's not about could I do the work? It's about where are my strengths and what really gets me excited get out of bed in the morning and do something. The reality is I am a creative entrepreneur. And so there's these just different stages. And I think recognizing and always being true to yourself, like it is your baby. So you don't want to let go. But is there a point where, like at the CEO job with 600 people, it's just a very, very different job. Things move slower. Things, they happen, it's just a very different organization. And so, yes, it's my baby, but the job itself has changed so much that by the time I decided to retire, I was like, I was ready. I was really ready. And I think just recognizing what your strengths are and what gets you excited to be at work, I think can help guide that decision. I am so proud. Like, I do feel like it is a journey of a child. I feel like Ruby is launched. I feel like it is in great hands. I feel like its own thing and it's thriving, and I get to be a part of that, and I get to be a continued fan. And as it evolves and changes, I always get to be the founder, and it just makes me super proud. So today, as on the board of directors, I love what they're doing, and that actually is huge. Like if the new CEO took things in a different direction, but she has just really grasped onto the importance of our culture, the importance of the small business customer. She's just phenomenal, and she loves the leadership team that I have hired, and so they're all there, and so it continues to thrive, and so it's pretty easy to let go and just be a fan.
Well, that's awesome to hear. Let's talk about your current role at Elevate Capital. You're a general partner, and you're involved in their new fund that is focused on funding female and underserved entrepreneurs. I'm curious, now that you're a founder and an investor, what do you look for when you're making funding decisions for what do you look for in a team in terms of what
yeah and so I was like, oh, I'm retired, and then I had been an investor in the Elevate Capital. They have two other funds, an inclusive fund and their Elevate Capital One fund. And so Nitin, who's the managing director, just like the second I announced my retirement, he's like, Jill, you gotta come get involved. Anyways, I went to a meeting, and it was full of just awesome Portland entrepreneurs that had successful exits that were just building something cool. And so I decided, all right, I'm in. There's a lot of talk. So investing at this early stage is really, really different because there's not a lot of traction. And so there's a lot of talk about the CEO and the team. And I think that for me personally, it's really being passionate about the problem that they are solving and whoever it is they're solving that problem for, and really just getting it. And that, I think that's my own background. So I've noticed that people that have a little sales experience, or certainly product management experience, that really can articulate and understand and be curious about the problems that they're solving. Scrappy, humble, and smart. I think smart enough to do the work to get the answers, but humble enough to be okay, or confident enough, maybe it is, to be okay. Like, hey, I also want help. That is the thesis around our investment criteria, is like, we want to invest in entrepreneurs with capital and put this amazing network of successful entrepreneurs to work as your mentors and network connections, and really help give you a leg up so that you can get to that next stage. So being open to having mentorship and guidance, and not thinking that you have to have it all figured out, I think is a big criteria. I could go on and on about all the different things that we look up. I think smart, humble, and hungry would be 3 words.
Sounds great. Well, my last question then to you. So a lot of students, watching this are going to get inspired and maybe want to follow a similar career path as your own. What kind of advice or tips or recommendations do you have for them, for someone who wants to start a business?
Okay, so for those of you that want to start a business, if I just take my own experience, I think, there was no rush. It was really until, I spent a lot of time just ideating, observing, like finding that intersection of what exists in the marketplace or what doesn't exist, what is needed, and what I'm good at and what gets me excited to work on. And I think, the world is such a changing place. There's no shortage of ideas. So, be patient and keep your eyes open and curious. And when you have that idea, there's another sort of push pull, and like, many people will want to discourage you from taking a risk. Important to be able to hear that and continue to move forward, but it's also really important to be open-minded and hearing what people's objections are, so that you can think that through and go, okay, no, that's a real objection, I need to solve for that, or that's a real objection, it's a deal killer, or they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. So and when you're ready, I still really believe in the business plan, doing the work, tapping into people, as really like look at other people who might have been in that industry and just reaching out to them. Oregon is famous for like people, almost anybody who will sit down with you and help you. I found that to be true when I had an idea, and just get your T's crossed and your I's dotted, and then when you're ready, go for it.
Awesome advice. I appreciate it. Jill Nelson is the general partner at Elevate Capital Fund and the founder and former CEO of Ruby Receptionists. Jill, thank you for sharing your story and awesome advice with our students today.
Thanks for having me, and best of luck to all of you.